Thank you, Rennie. And my name is Lingli. I work for China Mobile Research Institute. It is my honor to be here. Actually, I have been, the pleasure of part of networking and ONAP and projects, etc. And now we are more, working on standards as well. And from my previous experience, I find it essential to actually collaborate both standards and open source together in order to accelerate the cloud, transformation for our industry. And this is what the talk is about. I hope you guys would enjoy it. And also joining with me is Hui from Huawei. And Hui, would you like to do a little bit of self-introduction? Okay, so I will start. First of all, the background. So why we're talking about this collaboration, why at this time. And then I would invite our expert from Huawei to share more about, what is the current status about it. And then we will talk about a little bit preliminary thinking about how we move forward. Okay, I'll start with the background. So why this topic and why now? Because this year actually is the 10th anniversary of at CNFV with network function virtualization, I mean. And this marks actually a big, I think, trend for our telecom industry because it kicks off the softwareization transformation for telecom network. And 10 years passed, and actually in the first half of this year, at CNFV, which drives the standardization for network function virtualization, published 2 white papers. One is from the communication service provider's perspective, and the other is more from a technical perspective. Here is a very brief summary of the history. How NFV has been evolving. And as you can see that we circle 4 bullets in right circle. They marks the birth of the NFV transformation, and then the first reference architecture standards publication, and also when it starts looking for network automation, and then latestly about the cloud native transformation. And there's a very interesting pattern here, and as you can see that we mark the standards events in blue, and the red circled ones is actually marked for its relevant. I'm sorry, is that for me? Okay. It actually marks the relevant open source activities or initiatives. And as you can see that, back in the reference architecture publishment, OPNFV and OSM, OpenO and ONAP, actually those open source initiatives and currently hosted under Linux Foundation networking actually happen shortly after the reference architecture publication, which means that those open source initiatives are actually launched after the standardization. And then things changed. As you can see that we have our AnyKit funded, and Nephew funded, and Silver funded, and then at CNFV actually considering introduction of cloud management architecture. So this is a switch of this interplay between standardization and open source. This also, indicating, we have actually successfully triggered a feedback loop between these 2 kinds of industry organizations. And now we are for the 10th anniversary, and what's the next? And the white papers I just mentioned published, recently. Operators are actually, calling for more innovation and more standardization to enable multi-vendor interoperability, as you would always imagine. But this time, for both unified cloud and network orchestration, because we are moving towards cloud native, and hyperscalers are also entering into industry. So we have much more diversity in infrastructure providers. So we need unification, and we also need simplification. So cloud native automation, artificial intelligence actually could be playing the key role. But the challenge for us moving forward, especially from the service provider's perspective, is there is big fragmentation among telecom cloud between different solution providers. And there has doubts that whether or not we could actually maintain business sustainability, given the fact that the standards are moving very slow. They cannot catch up with open source releases. And open source releases are actually turned to be short-lived. And there's always a concern whether or not we could actually solve that problem. So what we identified and represented is that we're calling for more collaboration, coordination between these two types of industry organizations to actually address this big challenge. So this is the background. And now we move to more in detailed, depth into the specifics. So Hui, I will handing over to you.
All right, thank you, Lingli. And I think I borrowed this page from the Rania, maybe. I don't know, but I saw one of your presentation or somewhere you published. So I copied that from there, and I moved to here to show your view from the open source regarding the position you are locating different open source projects in the telecom infrastructures. But when we move back to be realistically, I wasn't here. I apologize. Didn't listen to your speech. I was thinking I should come early, unfortunately. So I made another one. So probably you have time, we can take some time to sit down to work on this. So this is more like, I think what happened today in telecom operators. If you look at your right, there's like 3GPP, they're leading standard for the mobile operators. Today's deployment, for example, 4G and 5G. And so what happened, the standard right in the middle is what their network organization or even network architecture looks like. To the top, you can see OSS towarding the TM forum. The people in the open source part, they are working on the camera to trying to open exposure the APIs for the application users. But on bottom, you can see that for the 5G call, or even you think about the other part, they have orchestrator, and it could be used to management with the multiple domain resources. And then right in the middle, you have cloud native applications, like whatever 5G call or something newly developed. And right in the bottom, you have both edge and even core part solutions infrastructure there. And so toward to your right part, you can look at the different open source projects sitting in different locations. You can, for example, Nephew, they are trying to align with Mano, and Aquino is talking about the edge. And we have Siva, Kubernetes, Helm, Annotate. So everything here, you're trying to align, could be optionally either to work together with standard or even they can independently deploy it. So this is a solution people are looking at. I put hyperscaler at the bottom. Today, they are mostly just the ICE part for the deployment of telecom operators infrastructures. I will go very quickly about what happened today, one page each. First of all, I think people are really interested why Kubernetes need to be standardized, right? Because the Kubernetes has been used, people in this conference, they think, okay, Kubernetes is great. Everybody should just use that, don't touch it. But to be realistically, or to be honestly, Kubernetes have to be, to do something for the standard. Otherwise, telecom operators is really pretty hard for them to accept it. You can look at this spreadsheet right in the center. Kubernetes has different release, right? Not every vendor support each release. But for the telecom operators, they are not only to pick just one of the release, but also they need a long-term maintenance. I mean, the telecom operators network, they need to deploy like more than 5 years, even more than somebody are using more than 10 years, life cycle. So for that reason, the different release, you can look at here, you have vendor A has supporting different workload release, version 1, version 2, and even beta. So this kind of things has to be some level of consensus by the operators and by the vendors. like Ericsson, Nokia, even Huawei. So we need to have a consensus in order to deploy Kubernetes in telecom operators network. So that is one of the reasons. So 018 has been standardized by the LCMV that has been acknowledged by the most telecom operator today. And then second example is cluster management API. I think people you are familiar more than me about what cluster is used. But when you look at the CNCF, the cluster is not really, I mean, agreed by everybody, right? Because there are different hyperscaler, even different IT company has his own cluster API definitions. But when we come to telecom operators, we need one, the unique feature for telecom operators, for globally, we have one unified standard that could be deployed not only in China Mobile, but also in AT&T, even for the Orange. So this is the standards beauty, and open source people may not understand today. So we are trying to help them to be deployed in the telecom operators network. And then there are one achievement, I think, we are talking about is the Linux Foundation ONAP here. So it's about ASD modeling. So the ASD modeling is kind of abstraction layer on top of the Kubernetes, but they are really compatible with the current Helm chart and also Kubernetes descriptors. So I think this is one thing a standard side think about. Let's do something to align with the open source like ONAP. If you look at it here, so I think it's maybe too complicated. I do not need to go in details, but what happened for I-551 is we are trying to coming back for our original standard to not define the container descriptors. So we are trying to align with ONAP regarding this kind of standard work. This is the one thing we want to mention here. And then the other part, like Annotate, I think Annotate also has done a very good job. I mean, has been acknowledged by GSMA and 3GPP and Linux foundations. So Annotate infrastructure standard, I1 was being used for the virtual machine, I2 was used for the map to the container, even cluster management. So Annotate focuses more like components, but the LSMV is more focused on the interface and the APIs. So there's some of the overlapping, but I think these are not serious issues. So this is also very efficient work. I mean, very collaborative work between standard and open source regarding the cloud native work. This is another example. And this page talking about the CIVA. I think this is more like containerized integrations. We can think about more like CAS layers. And so around the CIVA, you can see the standard has put in many specifications, for example, so 18, so 20, even the CAS layers. So those standards are trying to align with the CIVA regarding the containers infrastructures implementation in order to be adopted by the telecom operators. Let me move faster. I think I'll come to the end. You want to continue?
Well, that was fast, but I hope that you will stay with us and address the questions in the end. So next, forward-looking. We see that this is actually a shameless copy from Rennie. I think you made a very informative and insightful blog for this, at CNFV transformation, and also from the perspective of open source, and which is very, enlightening to us. And this is like a quick summary of that, blog. And actually, we see that the key issues that service providers are now seeing needs to be addressed for NFV standard evolution can be actually mapped to the corresponding Linux Foundation open source projects. To start with, at the orchestrator layer, what we actually envision applications for declarative network operations and also autonomous networking, which is I am personally working on. Actually corresponding to ONAP and NAFU, those are the open source reference implementations for Orchestrator. And also from the infrastructure perspective, we have a plenty of open source projects, initiatives are working on that to provide with our telecom cloud evolution with kernelization and also infrastructure management. And also we have like, Linux Foundation Edge and also several handful initiatives that could be providing solutions to address our next decade evolution for highly distributed telecom cloud, which could be consisted of both data centers and also our edge sites together. And altogether, this open source ecosystem, we believe, if we can actually making effective coordination, could help us to reduce fragmentation and also help us to maintain this business sustainability. Right. So if you guys are interested, you can refer to René's blog. I also provide a link here. And also I made a very small addition to that. As we see, there could also be an opportunity for us to introduce AI and machine learning into the picture. I'll explain a little bit more in this slide. We see that actually cloud is a very important infrastructure for us to actually do AI, right? So to support AI workloads, telecom cloud could also be a potential infrastructure, which means that telecom service provider could also combine their infrastructure and expose AI services, in the form of computing resources or combined AI edge infrastructure and platforms, just like Tina mentioned, that has already been work in progress in the edge umbrella. And the challenge here we face is that we need actually to standardize or unify the GPU and NPU virtualization solutions. Because without a standardized uniform interface, it would mean an undesirable binding, between the upper layer applications and the infrastructure under below. So in that case, we could not actually secure our supply chain when we're building our telecom cloud solutions, infrastructures, as well as open to potentially as much as our customers. So suggesting here is that we actually work together with open source and standardization organizations to address it by providing a standard and open ecosystem for these virtualization interfaces. And from another perspective is AI for cloud, which is most of the work that I have been doing in the recent years is that introducing AI-based, operations or solutions algorithms into network operation. We can envision actually building a core engine, not only for AI algorithm, but also for a simulation engine that could actually verify those AI-suggested solutions before actually rolling out into our production network. So perhaps we can also work together on exploring that direction as well. So in summary, we believe that there's actually potential collaboration, huge collaboration opportunities between telecom standards and open source at this very time. For standard and its traditional telecom ecosystem, I think we need to move faster. While in the same time that open source initiatives could be working more closer with us, so that together we can actually keep those two types of organizations synchronized and help us to build the second successful ecosystem for our next generation for telecom cloud. And that's it. And thank you guys for your attention. Any questions?
About the container native workloads, we've worked with different service providers like Verizon and Rakuten in Japan. I think they are taking different approaches in incorporating commercial solutions like OCP from Red Hat, and also from Rakuten point of view, they're using Robin.io from an open source community, not open source, but startup company. So in your view, do you think that can actually be standardized or be pushed to an open source community to build up that CNF infrastructure for operators. Can that be accomplished? Is that something that can also be done similar to what we've done in the past for NFV with OpenStack?
So to start with, you're working for?
F5 Networks.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. You take that question.
Right. So you talk about two companies, right? So first one is Rakuten, the other one is Verizon. Yeah. So for Verizon, I think the major vendor is like Ericsson. So for ORAD, maybe I could not disclose because it's more like privacy. I think the Verizon is using Rift.io for the orchestrator. People are familiar. I mean, then under it, they are using the Ericsson and also other company I couldn't claim because it's not public. But I think at this moment, even for the cloud native, I mean, today, for the core part, they are totally 100% like LCMV aligned, as far as I understand. They are approaching us. They are using our specifications. For the run part, I mean, they are using the Kubernetes native API to deploy that. But for the run part, like CUDRU, they are whatever you call that is cloud native applications. I'm not 100% sure. So they can claim that it's cloud native applications, but they are still, I think they are still using SMO at top and OCloud at the bottom. And today, Verizon is still approaching Docomo regarding how virtual machine and the bare metal container could be hybrid and could be deployed. I mean by common management plan. So for talking about Verizon, I don't think they are different compared I'm talking here. But for the Rakuten, I think it's a little bit different. So Rakuten, they are, I don't know how many users they have. As far as I heard, 7 million. If you talk about China Mobile, it's like 1 billion, right? So depends on scale. I think today, like Dish, like Rakuten, they are still small scale. I'm not sure the business is going good, but at least I think today the mainstream are still going to telecom path directions. People are not so, revolutionary or so, but still this is a legacy consideration. You need a 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G interconnections. You need to build the infrastructures to let them to really connect to each other, other than to build scratch, right? So this is the, I think it's different from the IT part. So the telecom is really legacy and backward compatibility consideration.
Thank you. Just follow up with one more question about what's in your view, how long would it take to achieve a full cloud native state for core networks?
I personally don't think there's anything going to change for 5G core because I think most of the people estimate 5G core is stable. Most of the vendor solution is also stable. Nobody going to change anything. And most of them, I think most of them are using container because in this real world, there's no definition of cloud native applications. If people are talking about a container, everybody is using container. If you're talking about a microservice, everybody is using microservices. And so, but I think there are other talking about the cloud native application definitions, but still, I think people are evolving. I mean, regarding the scaling, upgrade, this kind of capabilities, vendors are considering to support better in the future. And so I think maybe in the 5.5G or even 6G, there are more and more advanced technology will be come into the telecom world. But I have no answer for what is the cloud native application.
Thanks, Dr.
You're welcome.
I'd like to add just another perspective to your original question about whether cloud native technologies are going to be open source or standardized. So from the Linux Foundation perspective, we're open to any company that wants to start a new open source project or join an existing open source project and contribute to the technology. All the technology that was presented today wasn't created by the Linux Foundation. It was created by member companies that came in, worked together, and created an open source project, and which is the result of combining their technologies. So I think, there's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So this is what the Linux Foundation is doing. I mean, in the short term, it could be good or useful to take some proprietary technology, and it looks it might be better at some point than the open source technology. But at the end of the day, probably the power of the community will outpace that proprietary solution. And I'm speaking as someone who's been on both sides. I worked for vendors like Samsung and Nokia and Alcatel-Lucent, and we had our own proprietary technology, but I kind of, at some point, realized that it's better to join forces and develop these things as a community effort and not just as a one company effort, because at the end of the day, you waste resources. So bottom line, the Linux Foundation is always open to new projects, and we've seen things like the Nephew project that was proposed a year ago by Google and became an open source project, Camara and Silva that were initiated not so long ago. So we're always open for the next open source initiative.
And thank you for the question. I would also like add a little bit of perspective from service providers' perspective. You named, I think, both Verizon and also Rakuten. I think they're different, as Hui just mentioned. But more specifically, personally, I think that Verizon is more like China Mobile. It's huge, and it has a lot of legacy. So what concerns about them, I imagine, much like China Mobile, is that we are not that fast into, open innovation. What we care the most is that we could leverage innovative technologies while at the same time and utmost we keep our services and customers stable. So that is what we need to stress out, business sustainability. So in that case, we have always considered there is a variety of different technologies, not only for different Gs, XGs, for mobile access network, but also different technologies when we are actually building our telecom cloud. So this is the same situation here for Verizon. They might be doing some trials, they might be doing some tests, pilots with innovative partners, but coming to reality, when they are doing scale deployment, they have always to consider to, refer to standards. They can make their own enterprise standards, or they can refer to established, global standards to actually unify the solution so that they can secure their supply chain and also maintain business sustainability. And speaking of Rakuten, I think, as we just mentioned, it's quite small, they don't have that legacy. They only run their their 5G network, so they can be there to try anything new. But from another perspective is that I also heard from Rakuten guys that they're actually trying to sell their solutions to other service providers. So I have strong doubts that when they're actually selling their solutions to other service providers like us, more traditional ones, they have to care about the same situation as well. And
thank you.
Okay.
So I read one news today. I think Rakuten is selling to 1x1 in Germany, right? So they do sell to Open RAN solution to the Germany, I think so.
Yeah, we follow that very closely. The deal was made early this year, I think.
Yes, yes, I know that. Okay, no problem. So,
thank you.
yeah, good talk to you. Thank you. Yeah, very honored.